Good afternoon. Dr. Kaku, could you tell me, listening to you, I have an impression that in about 40 to 50 years, Matrix movie will just be a historical movie. And now you are saying this is being so funny. However, there is a great probability that in the future, the power of machines can simply erase us. And the wall, and it's not you who will come to the wallpaper, just your digital replica. What kind of comments would you make?
Let me say two things. Some people say that one day robots will take over the earth. I'm a scientist. I took a BBC film crew to interview the inventor of Asimo. Asimo is the world's most advanced robot. Asimo is a Japanese robot. It can run, walk, climb up stairs, dance. It dances better than me. I've been on many TV programs with Asimo, much better dancer. So I asked the inventor of Asimo, how smart is the world's smartest robot? Is it going to replace us? And he said, well, to be very honest, if you compare Asimo to an animal, Asimo has the intelligence of a cockroach, a retarded cockroach, a stupid, lobotomized, retarded cockroach. Asimo is almost like a tape recorder. It cannot understand. It cannot gossip. It cannot understand itself. But, to answer your question, in the future, I say that in the coming decades, we will have robots as smart as a mouse, as smart as a rabbit, and then after that, as smart as a dog, as smart as a cat. Maybe by the end of this century, we will have robots as smart as a monkey. At that point, they could be dangerous because they'll be very strong, and like a monkey, they will have self-awareness. They will understand who they are versus humans. At that point, I think we should put a chip in their brain to shut them off if they get uppity. So we will have a panic button, the off button. We will be able to set off every time a robot gets too uppity. Now remember that robots are adding machines. We forget that. Hollywood brainwashed us into thinking that machines are self-aware, that they are creative, that they can talk to you. No, robots are adding machines, very sophisticated adding machines. Now eventually they could become dangerous, but I think we have many, many, many decades before we worry about robots being as intelligent as a human being. I do not lose any sleep over this question.
Запитання з лівого мікрофона, прошу.
You came to Ukraine, and many of us have read your books. I think all of us have seen your TV shows, and I'd like to ask, what do you like to watch, to listen to, or to read, and who is a person that inspires you? Thank you.
Ooh, that's a hard question. Who inspires me? Well, the people who inspire me are the ones who see that science is about freedom and liberation and ideas. For example, science creates not just wealth, the wealth of computers and lasers and satellites, but science, like the internet, creates awareness among people who are not aware. So, for example, I speak in the Arab world often. I speak in Saudi Arabia, I speak in other Middle Eastern countries. And the young people there are awakening because of the internet. They realize that they can have a better society. They don't have to live like this. They don't have to live like the way they live now. They can have power. They can be empowered by the internet. And I think that's what inspires me, is when I see people begin to take control over their destiny because of the internet, which creates democracy. And in history, no two democracies war with each other. Think of every war you had to memorize since you were a child. Hundreds of wars you had to memorize. They've always been between kings, queens, emperors, and dictators, never between two democracies. Because in a democracy, people want to have a good life. They want to have a family. They want to send their kids to a good school. They want to have enough to eat. They don't want to send their children to die for the king or die for the queen. And so what inspires me are scientists who talk about science as liberating, as empowering, as giving power to the powerless, as giving information that can be used to create democracy. And democracies do not war with other democracies. Now, in the future, we will have wars. We will have differences. But there'll be fewer wars because the people will demand prosperity rather than glory for the king. They will demand that people have a good life, that they have clothing, that they have schooling and education. And so that inspires me when some scientists say, I have a vision. And that vision is science as a liberator, as a democratizer, as an empowerer.
A question from the first row, please. Dr. Kaku, thank you very much for your lecture. I have a question. Who will control the area of information that will be generated by these technologies in the world we're talking about? What will be the position of the governments and the states and that future of our world which we discuss?
Some people worry about Big Brother, that computers will spy on us and they will control us. That was a possibility before 1989. You see, before 1989, the internet was called ARPANET, and it was created by the Pentagon, by the military, to fight and win a nuclear war. That's why the internet is so strange. People say, why does the internet have no instructions? Why doesn't it have a government? Why doesn't the internet have a censor? You can say anything you want, do anything. Why? And the reason is that's the way we scientists wanted it. We wanted the internet to be a road to rebuild America after World War III. After nuclear war, many cities would be vaporized. And we scientists were told by the government, rebuild America after World War III. But then in 1989, something magical happened. In 1989, the National Science Foundation of the United States took this military weapon and gave it away for free. This is the first time in history that a major military weapon was given away for free. Blueprints, codes, coding, all of it just given away for free. Now, the internet is unstoppable. No nation can control the internet because it was given away for free. The problem is not Big Brother. The problem is Little Brother. Pesky Nigerian scam artists who want to steal your credit cards. Criminals, yes, they are a problem. Viruses. But remember that even nature, Mother Nature cannot control viruses after 3.5 billion years. Life has been on the earth for 3.5 billion years, and we still have viruses. So even nature has a hard time controlling viruses. But I think that's a small price to pay. A small price to pay, these little viruses, for the enormous power that the internet gives us to have infinite information for free. As Deng Xiaoping of China liked to say, when you open the window, some flies come in. Yes, some flies do come in, but the air comes in, refreshing, ennobling. Air comes in, oxygen that makes us breathe again. And I think that's the beauty of the internet. The internet is air that we breathe, information, life, ideas, innovation. But there's a price to pay, and that is a few flies come in with it, meaning that we will have petty criminals, we will have viruses, but no government can control the internet. Governments try, but they will fail.
A question from the central microphone.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for a very interesting lecture. My name is Bohdar. I studied journalism in Kyiv Mohil Academy, and my question is directly connected to the video. And the movie, you said that in the future we won't be able to keep any secrets. So does it mean that it won't be any ways to keep as the safety of information, to have the private life, or everything will be reachable in one click or blink? Thank you.
Privacy is going to be a problem. But one reason is that software programmers want to become the next Facebook. They want to become billionaires overnight. So the smartest people on the internet work to create the next Facebook, not to protect your privacy. But eventually, these people will go back to creating software that protects our privacy. Now remember that every invention does have a downside. For example, the telephone. Go back 100 years. Read the newspapers 100 years ago, and people denounced the telephone. They said the telephone was evil because we won't talk to our close friends anymore. We'll talk to this voice, this mysterious voice in the ether. Well, the critics were absolutely right. We don't talk to our close friends so much. We spend hours and hours talking to this voice in the ether, and we love it. We love it because instead of talking to 20 people, we can talk to 200. And now with the internet, we can talk to 2 billion. So there is a price to pay. We don't talk to 20 people anymore. Our circle of friends has expanded exponentially. And with it, the concept of nation, the concept of neighbor, the concept of society has also changed because young people are more global. Young people think more globally than ever before. Like I said, we will still have nations, we will still have taxation, sewer systems, private militias and things like that. We will still have governments. But young people will more and more think planetary because that's who they play with. That's who they know because their circle of friends is no longer just 20 people. Their circle of friends is the entire Earth. But as you correctly pointed out, there's a downside to every technology, and the downside here is privacy. But we will have better software to protect our privacy once software programmers realize they're not going to become the next Zuckerberg to create the next Facebook.
Another question from the front row.
Dr. Kaku, thank you very much for a visit to Ukraine, and my question will be the following. Do you think that these new technologies mentioned in your lecture and video are simply widening the gap between rich countries and the people and nations who have this access to the technologies and those who do not?
Good question. First of all, the question was, will we have a digital rich and digital poor? Well, 10 years ago in America, there was a big debate about that question. Nobody debates that anymore because the answer is obvious. The people who are connected are children, poor children. If you are a poor kid and you are not on Facebook, you are not on Twitter, you don't exist. You don't exist. People don't know you. Who are you? You're not on Facebook. You're not on Twitter. And so access was not the problem. We have Moore's Law. We have mass production. Things get cheaper every year. The problem is not access. The problem is jobs. The job market is changing. And it's changing from commodity capital more towards intellectual capital. Realize that if your country only produces food, let's say, food prices get cheaper every decade. On average, food prices, their commodity, get cheaper every year. This morning you had breakfast that the Tsar of Russia could not have had 100 years ago. Think of what you had for breakfast. The King of England could not have eaten your breakfast 100 years ago. That's the process that commodities can be mass produced. But the brain cannot be mass produced. This means that talent, imagination, experience, leadership, creativity, that cannot be mass produced. And that's what we have in this room. Every revolution has winners and losers. You are among the winners. Because what's inside this room? Inside this room are the future leaders, the future thinkers, the future opinion makers, the people who are educated, the people who have imagination, innovation, experience, leadership. That's what's in this room. And people like you will thrive in the future. Unfortunately, nations which will be poor in the future are nations which only rely on agriculture. Commodities, you have to be careful. Some commodities, of course, like oil, rise in price. But on average, commodities like food fall in price. So nations which will be poor in the future are nations which do not understand that capitalism is making a transition from commodity capital more towards intellectual capital, and that's what we have here in this room.
Саме тут у нас зібралися представники цього капіталізму у цьому залі.
Professor Kaku, I want to thank you for this interesting lecture. It was very interesting. And I have one question. Today you told us about all our world medicine money that will be digitalized in future. And to your mind, how many years should pass our mind to our brain to be digitalized? And will human extinct like a biological species like dinosaurs and transform into a form of cyborgs or simply in some form of digitalized form of life? Thank you.
Okay, the question is, will we digitalize the mind? That will take maybe 100 years. Now, realize that today there are two great mysteries of science. The first mystery is the universe. Where the universe came from, where the universe is going. That's the first great mystery. The second great mystery is the mind. Sitting on your shoulders is 3 pounds. These 3 pounds of tissue are the most complicated object in the solar system. Perhaps in this sector of the Milky Way galaxy, your brain is the most complex object known to science. But we're children trying to understand the human brain. That's why President Obama and the European Union have allocated billions of euros to try to understand the pathways of the brain. And they say it may take 50 years. 50 years just to get a map of the brain. But maybe in 100 years, it will be possible to make a backup copy of your mind. Okay? So you 2.0, okay? That may be possible, I can't say for sure. In which case, some people think we will become immortal. We will live forever as a CD-ROM, as a backup copy. Now, I don't know. All I know is that governments are now taking this very seriously. Billions of euros will be allocated to understand the human mind, but it will take many, many decades. And we will have many decades to debate the ethical questions of whether or not we should enhance ourselves. Right now, we can connect the brain to a mechanical arm that is stronger than a human. This has already been done. We can communicate the brain to legs and create Iron Man. Iron Man is already a distinct possibility. And then with genetic engineering, we may want to enhance ourselves to become a little bit smarter, perhaps better looking, who knows? These are questions that only society can answer. And how do we answer these questions? We need wisdom. But where does wisdom come from? Wisdom comes from vigorous democratic debate among informed people. That's where wisdom comes from. And that's why I write books. That's why I do television, to stimulate the debate about these big questions that face us in the future. How far do we want to enhance ourselves? Do we want to become supermen, superwomen? That is a possibility. But we have to democratically discuss this among ourselves, and that's where wisdom comes from. Wisdom comes from vigorous debate among informed people. And hopefully that's what I do with my life. Before we worry about robots being as intelligent as a human being. I do not lose any sleep over this question.
Запитання з лівого мікрофона, прошу.
you came to Ukraine, and many of us have read your books. I think all of us have seen your TV shows, and I'd like to ask, what do you like to watch, to listen to, or to read, and who is a person that inspires you? Thank you.
Ooh, that's a hard question. Who inspires me? Well, the people who inspire over the earth. I'm a scientist. I took a BBC film crew to interview the inventor of Asimo. Asimo is the world's most advanced robot. Asimo is a Japanese robot. It can run, walk, climb upstairs, dance. It dances better than me. I've been on many TV programs with Asimo, much better dancer. So I asked the inventor of Asimo, how smart is the world's smartest robot? Is it going to replace us? And he said, well, to be very honest, if you compare Asimo to an animal, Asimo has the intelligence of a cockroach, a retarded...
Good afternoon. Dr. Kaku, could you tell me, listening to you, I have an impression that in about 40 to 50 years, Matrix movie will just be a historical movie. And now you are saying this is being so funny. However, there is a great probability that in the future the power of machines can simply erase us, and the wall. And it's not you who will come to the wallpaper, just your digital replica. What kind of comments would you make?
Let me say two things. Some people say that one day robots will take over awareness. They will understand who they are versus humans. At that point, I think we should put a chip in their brain to shut them off if they get uppity. So we will have a panic button, the off button. We will be able to set off every time a robot gets too uppity. Now remember that robots are adding machines. We forget that. Hollywood brainwashed us into thinking that machines are self-aware, that they are creative, that they can talk to you. No, robots are adding machines, very sophisticated adding machines. Now eventually they could become dangerous, but I think we have many, many, many decades. Cockroach, a stupid, lobotomized, retarded cockroach. Asimo is almost like a tape recorder. It cannot understand. It cannot gossip. It cannot understand itself. But, to answer your question, in the future, I say that in the coming decades, we will have robots as smart as a mouse, as smart as a rabbit, and then after that, as smart as a dog, as smart as a cat. Maybe by the end of this century, we will have robots as smart as a monkey. At that point, they could be dangerous because they'll be very strong, and like a monkey, they will have self-awareness.